Hi, my name is Kefanganga. I'm a real estate consultant in Nairobi. Welcome to the Real Estate Academy. Today, we're going to discuss location and why it is important to consider location and the characteristics of a good location in the Nairobi market. Now, location refers to the geographical positioning of a property in the context of amenities or facilities around it. Good locations depend on the person using the property or occupying the property. So ideally, there is no standard measure of what a good location is. It's very subjective. So when we discuss a location with a client, we are trying to explain to them or understand their needs in the context of a location and try to provide them with the best fit for them. For example, a location such as Kilimani is good for someone who, for example, works in Upper Hill, goes to town, or also prefers apartments as a property type. But it may not be good for someone with a big family or someone who prefers the country lifestyle. Now, when we discuss location in the context of property value as well, then location becomes really important. When you do a valuation, you're trying to establish what is the value of a property in relation to other properties. You're trying to understand what amenities are available to this property. We'll take an example. If, for example, today you have some money you want to spend on an apartment, if it's under 10 million, then you're looking at locations that are further away from Nairobi town. You're also looking at locations that would provide you with access to certain amenities. If you're looking to spend a bit more money, then it brings you closer into town and also brings you into certain neighborhoods. For example, if you're going to spend a bit more than 10 million, say you're within the 10 to 20 million bracket, then you can buy an apartment in Lavington, you can buy an apartment in Kilimani, in Kileleshwa, which allows you access to certain utilities. For example, you are closer to malls, you are closer to international schools, you are closer to golf clubs and sports facilities, you are closer to common accesses. For example, you are closer to the expressway, you are closer to Ngong Road, you are closer to places that would allow you to live or get into Nairobi easily. So when you're spending money, you're trying to understand this client, or as a client, ideally, what is important to me? Do I work close to town? Or, for example, I work outside town. For example, if you work in Thika, then there's no point in you buying an apartment within the Nairobi area. Ideally, you could buy an apartment along Thika Road, further down from Thika Road, or you could buy an apartment in Thika. So in the context of what a good location is, it is very subjective. We are discussing with the client, we are trying to understand, okay, you live in the diaspora, you want to come into Nairobi. What common areas do you go to? For example, if you travel quite often around, you go to Nakuru, or ideally your business is in the Limuru area, then you're moving to Ayakiwe. You're staying away from, say, for example, Mombasa Road. If your common area of occupation or where you trade or where you go often is the airport, then you want to be in close proximity to the airport. So you're moving to Mombasa Road. So when you make these decisions for ownership, then you're trying to understand also which schools are in the neighborhood. For example, if you have children and you want them to go to an international school, then locations, say, on Mombasa Road are not good for you. Locations on Thika Road are not good for you. Then you're moving to the other side of town, closer to Lavington, closer to Kileleshwa, closer to Kilimani, closer to Karen. Now, if, for example, you're someone who needs to access a hospital easily, then you're moving closer to areas with hospitals. In the west of Nairobi, then you're looking at Langata, you're looking at Kilimani, you're looking at Karen, you're looking at Kileleshwa, because you have access to several hospitals. You have access to Kenyatta, you have access to Nairobi Hospital, you have access to Coptic, you have access to Nairobi Women's. On the other side of town, on the east, then you're looking at areas closer, Jacaranda Estate, which is closer, or Membley Estate, which is closer to Kenyatta University Referral Hospital as well. So when you make these decisions, you're looking at specifics of the client or your own specifics. What ideally do you do on a daily basis? It makes no sense for you to live in an area where you have to commute across town, especially in the context of costs and time that would be spent in traffic. Now, there are also people who do not have sensitivity for price. For example, if you're spending a bit more money, you're spending in the region of, say, 40 to 60 million, then ideally location becomes fluid. You're looking at now specifics for neighborhoods. You're looking at Karen, you're looking at Runda, you're looking at areas on Kiambu Road, you're looking at Muthaiga, because now you can afford certain real estate types that a typical person would not afford. So locations are the main determinant, and uses for land and uses for property specific to individuals are the main determinants of what ideally a client would get. Now, when you look at it from a valuation perspective, pricing for real estate, again, areas that are away from town are better or are more expensive vis-a-vis areas that are very close to town. For example, if you're going to live, say, in Muthaiga, you're going to live in Runda, in Karen, which is a drive, it's away from town. If you're going to live in Tigoni, it's going to be a bit more expensive vis-a-vis living in Ngara or Parklands or such areas. So when you discuss location, or you're explaining locations to a client, the main or the most important aspect of it is exactly what do they want the property for. Also, when you're discussing this in the context of industrial property, you could look at it differently. If you go to industrial area now, you have certain challenges. You have challenges with access, you have challenges with water. If you're trying to set up a business, then you are better off moving to a location such as Tatu City, for example, because you have better planning for land, you have better utilities, you have better accesses, you have better buildings even for your industry. So these location decisions also move from residential, they move into commercial, they move into industrial and warehousing. And you've seen a lot of companies moving away from town and away from industrial area as new commercial areas and new factory areas come up, such as Nairobi Gate. You have now Tatu City Special Economic Zone. So you have these considerations. Also, you're looking at zoning. There are some areas that are zoned for different uses. So you have, as I said, some areas that are zoned for commercial, some for industrial. You even have restrictions for how far or how big you can build, affected by taxes. For example, if you are in the special economic zone area, Tatu City, Traffic, then you are paying less taxes for your business vis-a-vis being, say, in Westlands or Kilimani or Kileleshwa. So location varies and is determined by the client, but also has accommodating and accompanying costs. So basically you have, if you have property that is ideally spreading into Kiambu, then you're paying different rates than someone in a location that is in Nairobi. If you go onto the Ngong side, then again you have different rates for Kajiado vis-a-vis the location that is going to be within the Nairobi metropolitan area. So that is how location is important. So as you make these decisions for real estate, please understand that location is going to be a significant factor for either your value, also your taxes, and also the preference of your client or the people you're trying to sell or serve as tenants as well. Thank you so much.